Hello and welcome to Concert Pipeline. I'm Steve Jones. Today on the program, we have kind of a twofer in terms of the content for the podcast today. First, I'm going to look back on the Something Corporate show that I went to just a week and a half ago at this point down in Anaheim. They played their second show in a long time, and they did a pair of shows on New Year's Eve and the day before New Year's Eve, and it was something that was really special to me. I really wanted to make the effort to be there because this is my favorite musician, reuniting with his original band, Something Corporate, with all the members there, and I wanted to be a part of that moment. I've been a part of his I followed his career throughout since he pretty much shortly after he started Something Corporate, and I wanted to follow this show and be able to cover it and be a fly on the wall for that moment. So we're going to cover that in just a moment. Also, this is the 10th anniversary of Concert Pipeline, the podcast. Concert Pipeline started back in 2003 as a public access TV show in Napa, and then moved to San Francisco and covered San Francisco and Napa as well back in the day. And then I did a bunch of interviews back then as Concert Pipeline. I put it on the shelf for a while as I started a family. And then 10 years ago now, from this moment, I decided to start Concert Pipeline back up as a podcast. And it was something I was going to do for myself because I missed concerts. I hadn't been to as many after I had my daughter and then subsequently my son. And I wanted to bring it back. I wanted to get to more concerts. I wanted to talk to bands again. And I figured I could do it easily as a podcast where it wouldn't be too intrusive, wouldn't cost too much to create. And I wanted to make that happen. I would get help from people I knew who had created podcasts and getting it off the ground. And I was pitching it to a buddy, and he said, "Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll do it with you." And so that buddy did the first 100 episodes with me, and I'm forever grateful that he partnered with me on the podcast then. And then he retired, and then I brought in another friend to do the next 150 episodes or something. After that, he lasted a lot longer in terms of duration and number of episodes that we did together. And then after that, it's just been this thing that I've always done by myself. And once in a while, I'll bring a friend on the podcast to do it with me, that sort of thing. But it's been this thing I've kept up and done almost every week now for the past 10 years, with little exception. The first real break I took was last year. I took about 3 months off of the podcast for duck hunting season, and it was during the holidays. And there's not a lot going on in the music scene during the holidays. Not a lot of bands doing anything, putting out music or touring that much. So they put it up. So I figured, why don't I focus more on my duck hunting hobby, which really was starting to take off at that point, and I was becoming what I see as an actual hunter, and that felt good to kind of take a break for a moment. And now I haven't done an episode for about a month now, and I've kind of done the same sort of thing where I'm just taking a break and focusing on duck hunting, even though it's not a great season, and not just for me, but for many duck hunters out there, and just focus on not squeezing so much in all at the same time. But I couldn't leave without acknowledging the 10th anniversary of this podcast. So we'll get into 10th anniversary in a bit, and I would love to pull together a ton of clips from the old show. I mean, from the show over the 10 years. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work that I just don't have time for right now. So I'm not going to do that, but I am going to relive some moments that were memorable to me over the 10 years and talk about that. So we'll get into that in just a bit. Let's start with Something Corporate. I wanted to go to this show. I'm in Andrew McMahon's fan club, and that gives me more access to him, to get to be present for Q&As that he does, where Zoom hangouts, and live performances where just him and a piano in his garage. playing songs and taking requests, and pre-sale to concert tickets, discounts on merch if I want it, that sort of thing, like this something corporate T-shirt that I'm wearing, that sort of thing. So um, so I wanted to make the effort to go down to Anaheim and be there for this show. Also, at Andrew McMahon and Something Corporate's reunion show in Vegas back in October, Andrew told me shortly beforehand that he was using video from our first interview in 2004 in a montage that's played at the beginning of their show that they come out on stage to. And that blew my mind. It was such an incredible feeling for me to have that moment. So so I watched it live stream when that happened. But I was like, you know what? I got to see this band live. I got to pay it back as well. And so I got tickets to Something Corporate show in Anaheim on December 30th, and I decided I'd invite my daughter. And she's 13 years old, can do what she wants, and for whatever reason she still wants to spend time with her dad, and I love that a lot. We don't, we're not the same exact people. We are different. I try not to be too much of a parent to her, in terms of letting her live her life and kind of learn and make her own mistakes, but it's great to kind of still be present in her life. And so she wanted to join me for the road trip down to Anaheim for the concert. So the least I could do is add something else in there for her. So I added on an extra day for us to go to Knott's Berry Farm. We got up and left by 2 a.m. to get to Knott's Berry Farm the same day. That was a lot of standing around. We only made it on 3 rides. The first ride we waited 2 hours for, and it was just a lot of standing around. But she had fun. She enjoyed herself, and she enjoyed spending time with me. So in that sense, it's a win. And then the next day was Something Corporate. So we got to the venue early. It was City Grove of Anaheim, where they played their show, and we stood in line for a couple of hours. She waited in the car for a little bit so she could sit down. I chatted with some other Something Corporate fans and people that I'd kind of made acquaintances with before ahead of the show, and then the show is happening, and I was really excited. I was excited to be there, and this band Winona Fighter opened up the show, and it's always interesting how Andrew McMahon chooses bands that open their show, because it's like, it's someone who I've almost never heard of in most cases, but a lot of times they'll put on a good show or have interesting music, and it's diverse. It's different than just Andrew McMahon's music. He's not bringing out another piano rock guy to open for him. So this band Winona Fighter had a female musician, lead singer, and she just, to me, in terms of her stage presence, resembled Gwen Stefani back in their No Doubt days. She was all over the stage. She was, making good use of it. It was more rock than any of Andrew McMahon's bands, and most of the crowd didn't know who she was. But that didn't stop her from putting on an exciting show, getting the crowd worked up, and playing a couple of covers, since their catalog was not super huge. So I want to start by, we're going to sprinkle some music into this podcast, so we get that covered. I want to start by playing a song by Winona Fighter. This is a cover they did of Song 2 by Blur. Here it is. was Winona Fighter and their cover of Blur's Song 2 here on Concert Pipeline. And so I'm going to continue on to something corporate. But before I do, after Winona Fighter's set ended, the drummer came over and threw a drumstick out to the crowd, and I caught it, and I handed it to my daughter, and I gave it to her, and she was super excited that we got it. And then she handed it back to me. I guess she didn't want it or something. I don't know. But so it's been sitting on my desk for the past week and a half since the concert. But it's cool to catch some concert memorabilia. I would have rather gotten something corporate memento, like a guitar pick from William Tell, who we were right in front of, or a set list to go in my set list book. But exciting to have a memory from that show. Although it'll end up in a box. I have other drumsticks from concerts, and I never was good at like labeling and keeping track of, my concert swag and stuff that I got. Like, I mean, other than set lists, I got those all in a binder now. But like concert backstage passes and photo passes and media passes, they're all in bags in a couple different locations. Those are not organized. Guitar picks, I have guitar picks from bands that aren't labeled, like they don't have the band's name on it. And I'm like, who is this from? I don't even know, but it was probably pretty cool to get from that concert. And drumsticks, I have some drumsticks, that sort of thing, right? But none of it's labeled. It just kind of went, and kind of a lot of it followed me around. And I should probably offload some of it, because it's like, I don't even know whose it is at this point, and I will soon forget that that's Winona Fighter's drummer's drumstick from the show. But on to something corporate. Okay, again, something corporate was a huge band for me back in 2003 when my music taste started to develop. I had a couple friends that I became close with who helped me not like shitty music as much, and really understand what good music is, and kind of develop my own taste, and kind of take from some of theirs, but also build in my own taste in terms of music. And Something Corporate was one of those early bands that I really latched onto from the first moment I heard them. And if you want to hear about more about my path with Something Corporate and Andrew McMahon's music, I recommend checking out Something in the Wilderness's podcast this week, because I'm on it, and I talked to him. Steve is the host. There's another Steve who's a fan of Something Corporate and Andrew McMahon's music, and we just talked for. I mean, I'm sure he cut it down a lot, but we talked for a good long while about this concert and about Andrew McMahon's music, and a lot of situations, and a particular song that we covered on his podcast. So check out Something in the Wilderness for that. And then go back and listen to a lot of his other episodes too, if you want to learn more and dive deep into Andrew McMahon's music, because he is a wealth of knowledge, and I've found myself learning a lot from his podcast. Okay, so Something Corporate is about to come on, and I'm really excited. We're standing there. We got there early, so we're like 2 people back. I wanted my daughter to be up close, so she didn't get claustrophobic, which kind of happened at another Andrew McMahon show that I took her to, and so she could see also, and see over people. And so she was like 2 people back, and I was right behind her, and Something Corporate comes on, and I noticed they had a video screen. So I was like, okay, they might do it. And they did it. They came out to the video intro that has clips from my first interview with Andrew McMahon back in 2004. So you could see those sprinkled in. And then they came out to this song, which is one that I'm a big fan of as well. And it was great. They came out to I Want to Save You. So I want to start by playing that intro again. I shared it on the podcast in a previous Andrew McMahon Something Corporate episode that I did. But I want to play it from this show, and with the song that they came out to, I Want to Save You. Here it is. That was "I Want to Save You" by Something Corporate here on Concert Pipeline. I'm going to play two more songs throughout this Something Corporate conversation for the podcast before it just turns into a big, deep Steve rambling session. And these two songs are songs that I never thought I would ever hear again. And so I'm going to play one of them now in just a second, but and then I'll save one actually for the end. So we kind of sprinkle some music out in the mix. I knew Something Corporate would play Constantine because they have to. It's their headlining set. They have all the time they want on stage, and so they're going to play just about everything. But when they are playing just about everything, then they have to include these songs. So I'm going to play Drunk Girl by Something Corporate, and then I'll talk about it after. Here it is.
Kiss the drunk girl on the lips. I let her go down. How could I have been so dumb? Her eyes were open. I know I am not the one. I know I am not the one. I know I am not the one. I kiss the drunk girl. Why do I do these things I do to myself? Who want to be kissed. But those two right there, they seem to want to be kissing each other. It's your show. I'm just living here. So I pulled away. I didn't think it would be right. I said, let's save this for another night. And she said, no, I know that everything is gonna be just fine. How could I do this when I wanted to be all mine? I kissed a drunk girl. Why do I do these things I do to myself? I kissed a drunk girl. I'm sure I could have been anybody else. Anybody else. Well, I know you don't care about me. I'm sure when all is said and done, I could hope you know me. You will have your fun. Come on now. I kissed a drunk girl. Why do I do these things that I do to myself? I kissed a drunk girl, and I'm sure I could have been anybody
That was Drunk Girl by Something Corporate from their show down in Anaheim. And again, that's a song that I never thought I was going to ever hear live. It's such an obscure Something Corporate song. It's not one of the most popular ones. It's not one that Andrew McMahon continues to play anymore because he mixes in Something Corporate songs from his other band, Jack's Mannequin, that came after Something Corporate, along with his current band, Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. And their songs like Woke Up in a Car that he will pull out almost every show, and other Something Corporate songs that he'll pull out regularly. But Drunk Girl is not one of them. And so to hear that song live, I was like, yes. And it's one of those that really I connect with on a level. Yeah, I mean, I had this moment where I was alone in a room with a friend's sister, and she was drunk, and and I was kind of looking after her a little bit. I don't remember the whole situation, but there was some kissing involved. Let's say that, and so I can, I mean, on a surface level, I can connect to that song for that reason. But it's also just a really fun song, and so it was great. And I'm going to save the other rare song that he did that I never thought I'd hear again live. I'm going to save that for the end. So we'll come back to that let me just say, the Sunday Corporate show was great. Seeing the energy that they had, Andrew McMahon, Josh Partington on guitars, William Tell on guitars, Clutch on the bass, and Brian Ireland on drums, all together back in their original form, just enjoying playing together. They've all moved on in their lives from this band, this thing that was such a part of them, that was, defined them to a sense. They lived together, like on the road, making music for a few years back between like '02 and '05, and then it just withered away. But the band lived on in their fans' hearts for so many years after that. And so the fact that they can get together and play one-off shows, and put all the shit from back in the day that made it difficult and made the band have to separate, put that aside, is incredible. It was such a great performance and such a fun night where Andrew just had a great time with his old friends, and they played the show. And there's going to be an Andrew McMahon cruise in November where Something Corporate plays again. So does Jack's Mannequin and Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness and a bunch of other bands as well. And that would be super cool to be at, but I'm not going to be a part of that. It's just too much all around. So that is what it is. Okay, I want to get into the Concert Pipeline podcast top moments that I just want to kind of reflect on and relive from the past 10 years. And I started out thinking about, man, it would be cool to do a top 10 countdown of top 10 moments from this podcast from when it originated back in 2014. And so again, Concert Pipeline started on January 10th, 2014. I rebooted Concert Pipeline from its previous iteration, kept the name to kind of have a brand. And I found when I was starting it out that I couldn't really get interviews with bands that I wanted to interview because I was starting from nothing. And so, rather than start from nothing, what I did was I took old episodes of the TV show, the Concert Pipeline TV show, and put it into podcast form. And I want to say that that we talked around that old content. We didn't just drop in old episodes. I want to say that we kind of introduced it and talked through that. And so we did like that for like the first 12 episodes, having old content before we started getting real interviews. And the first band that we interviewed was at a place called The Catalyst in Santa Cruz. It was a band called Monkey. And so we did that interview. That's not going to be one of the moments, but I wanted to pick one or two moments from each year that I just kind of relive and talk about and share the memory that I had from that time. So again, brace yourself because this is going to be a lot of me talking about those moments, but I'm going to take a stab at it. 2014. June 23rd, 2014, episode 32 of Concert Pipeline airs, and that is featuring Eddie Money. And Eddie Money was a legend during his time. I mean, he was incredible. And so the fact that I got to sit down with Eddie Money was super cool. I got to interview him at a county fair. I forget where even the county fair was, but it was middle of nowhere, like Folsom or something. I don't know. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, county fair. And I interviewed Eddie Money, but I also, that evening was special because it wasn't just Eddie Money that I was interacting with. I had an all access backstage pass, and I hung backstage, and I talked to people who were part of Eddie Money's circle, that were friends of his, and then part of the scene back when Eddie Money was, I'll just say it, relevant, when he was big. And I talked to a journalist who was a part of his crew and kind of like interviewed him and was like a part of that back in the day. I talked to one of his women. I don't know how else to put it, but he was like, he had hooked up with her, but then she was a groupie, but she became more than that. She became family through him and his band. I mean, I talked to her before even interviewing Eddie Money. I was sitting in a room with her backstage, and then I talked to her afterwards. I talked to the owner of the Raiders, and I don't remember his name. He has the bowl cut that. I mean, it looks just ridiculous. But I talked to him. He was backstage. I got a selfie with him, and he was standing on the side of the stage with me while Eddie Money was playing. And so I got to be on the side of the stage while Eddie Money was singing these hits and other songs that just like his fans grew up with, and just be a part of that moment. And that was such a cool feeling to get to do that. It was really cool. All right, Matt Costa, 2015. We're moving on to 2015 now. January 27th, 2015. Episode 46 of Concert Pipeline aired, which was an interview with Matt Costa. I interviewed Matt Costa at the Fillmore in San Francisco, which was it's a legendary venue, but it's such a piece of my history in music as well. You can get lost in the posters on the wall. You can taste the magic in the apples from the Fillmore. But also, I have memories from the Fillmore. I pissed in a bottle backstage at the Fillmore, and because I couldn't leave the backstage area. I didn't have a backstage pass, but I'd interviewed an opening band and didn't want to leave the backstage areas. And I got my friends backstage also. And so there was nowhere to go. There's one bathroom backstage, which I didn't even know there was one at the time, but it was in the main headliner's backstage room. And I couldn't go in there. I guess I could have knocked and said, "Can I use your pisser?" But I didn't. But anyway, Matt Costa, I interviewed backstage at the Fillmore, and he played a song for the podcast. And it was one of those that it's like, man, I wish I had video of it, but I just was holding two microphones up. I was holding one up to him, one up to his guitar. And he had a backup singer also for a couple parts of the song. And he played this song for me, which became so memorable and such an important part. And I listened to this recording of this song over and over because I connected with it. It was a part of my moment at that time. It's a song called Good Times. And I remember the hook in the chorus was "Good times are coming, good times are coming, good times are coming to an end," and I just connected with that line. I had just gotten divorced, like a freaking week earlier. I had separated with my wife, and that song was just a part of that moment for me. And I told him later, like, how much that meant to me. And it was such a crisp recording, even better than the recording on his album, which had a bunch of other production to it, like a lot of other instruments too, that overdid the song. And it just needed to be raw and rare. And I have the recording still of that song. And so just to have that was incredible. It was such a memorable moment for me, and I loved it. So I was super appreciative of Matt, and I interviewed him a couple years later and told him about the impact of that song. And he played another song for me later. Also, he's been super cool. He's a great folk musician, singer-songwriter. That was great. I have to add another moment from 2015, and that is May 4th, 2015, episode 58, Sylvan Esso. Sylvan Esso is a band that my buddy who used to host this podcast with me introduced me to, and I didn't know them at the time. I was offered an interview with them at the Fillmore, and I turned it down because I didn't think my buddy would want to do more interviews. I was trying not to overdo it. I tend to go on the long side of like, okay, let's cram it in, let's make it happen, let's do these interviews, let's do an episode a week. And it was just too much. It's been too much for my friends that I bring on, but I have a hard time saying no to interviews when they're offered. And this was a band that was offered, and I didn't know anything about them. And I told my buddy who had hosted the podcast with me at the time, and he's like, "No, you got to get that interview back. Get it? Can you get it back?" And I said, "Okay." And so I reached back out to them and said, I'm sorry. Can we do this interview? Can we make it happen? And we did. We made it happen at the Fillmore again. Again, it was such a memorable venue. And Sylvan Esso played 2 sold-out nights at the Fillmore. And this was an introduction to their music, where we had just a great chat. I mean, it was a cool chat where my buddy talked about Star Trek a lot. I didn't know much about Star Trek at the time. I was just getting started watching it in my solo life, my bachelor life of like binging Star Trek. in my free time, which there was a lot of newfound free time. And but Sylvan Esso put on this great performance, and I got really into their music and became a fan of their music and their albums, and that was super cool to be introduced to them as well. So those are my two memories from 2015. 2016, Jack's Mannequin. January 21st, 2016, episode 89 of Concert Pipeline, Jack's Mannequin. And this wasn't one where I had an interview with Andrew. I've interviewed him a handful of times over the years. But this is one where it was 10 years after his famous, notable Jack's Mannequin album, Everything in Transit, which, if you're watching on YouTube, has the artwork right here, is from Everything in Transit. And he was playing, he was touring Everything in Transit and playing the album in its entirety for a 10th anniversary, 10 years in transit tour. And this album was really important to me. And if you want to hear the full story, again, go check out Something in the Wildernesses podcast. I talk about it a little bit more, but I had interviewed Andrew in 2005 when he came to my apartment at San Francisco State, and it was a great interview. And then 3 weeks later, he was diagnosed with acute lymphatic leukemia, and it was this really thing that hit me really hard. And that album was a moment in time he recorded the album and finished all production on the album the day he found out he had cancer. So there's a lot of meaning in this album. And I had the opportunity to see it live in its entirety before, when I had a short interview with Andrew McMahon on my daughter's 4th birthday. And that would make it 2014. But my kid's mom, my wife at the time, said no. She was just done. It was my daughter's birthday. She's like, Spring's not having fun. She doesn't like it. We don't want to be here. We gotta go. And my daughter was just running around in a field in Golden Gate Park. She was having a fine time. She was not having a problem. And it was this opportunity to see this album that meant so much to me live. And I'll just say it, my kid's mom was being a bitch. At the beginning of the end, one instance that was like, okay, this is not okay. I'm not treated equal in this relationship, and something that is so important, so ingrained in me. I'd interviewed Andrew for 5 minutes and before his set, and I was like, "What you got planned for today, for the show today?" And he's like, "I'm gonna play Everything in Transit in its entirety." He was in between bands, and he was not doing that on a tour or anything. It was a one-off show, and I'm like, mind blown. This is incredible. And my kid's mom would only let me stay for 3 songs to record audio of 3 songs for the podcast, and I was not stoked. I was like, "This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing," and I didn't get to. Luckily, there was another opportunity, so it was kind of this resurgence and this opportunity where I went with some buddies and a group of friends, and we went to the show and had a great time, freaking great time. Even after the show, shenanigans happened, which I don't need to relive here, but it was cool. It was this memorable night where we sung our heads off and to every song on that album and then some. And it was just such an incredible show. One of my favorite concerts of all time in 2016. Takes us to the second memory of 2016 for me, March 25th, 2016. My favorite concert of all time was then. I'm going to get into that here. So the next concert, my favorite concert of all time, was in 2016. It was celebrating David Bowie. It was, and I had the opportunity to interview musicians that were playing this celebration of David Bowie. This took place, the first episode aired March 25th, 2016, episodes 97 through 99. I got 3 episodes worth of content out of this one concert where I interviewed like 6 different musicians. And it was Gary Oldman and friends. Gary Oldman, the actor, who was friends with David Bowie, was hosting this concert after we lost David Bowie. And I always appreciated David Bowie, but I really gained an appreciation for him around this time. After he died, I remember where I was when David Bowie died. I was in Seattle with my kids on a trip, and And David Bowie, just 2 days before he died, put out an album called Black Star, and that album connected with me. I played it a bunch. I really enjoyed it and appreciated it. And then this celebration came together, and I happened to get in touch with this guy who goes by the name Scroat. His name is actually Angelo, but he goes by Scroat, and he was performing, and he put the whole thing together with like 70 musicians throughout the night, 3.5 hours of David Bowie music, and it was incredible. Everybody who had such an appreciation for his music. A bunch of the crew was from the North Bay around Oakland, and then a bunch of the crew was from the South Bay down in LA area. They had done a show down in LA and had some other stars who were part of it down there, and a different crew up here. And so I was interviewing musicians who were either impacted by or a part of David Bowie's world, and playing these songs, that just the hits, the deep cuts. Like, I mean, it was incredible. And so we get to the venue, and they're sound checking, and it was just a constant sound check because they were going through as much of the set as they could, getting people on and off and get a chance to try practice a song once before the actual show. And so it was like 2 hours of sound check followed by 3+ hours of David Bowie music. And I'm interviewing folks backstage wherever I can, just talking to them, not as much about their individual music, a little bit, but about David Bowie and the impact that he had on them. And I was able to work an interview with Gary Oldman also, which was super cool. I had over 1 or 2 years prior, actually, even before David Bowie died, I had dressed up for Halloween as David Bowie from the Labyrinth, for my daughter, originally, because she wanted to be Sarah, the girl from the Labyrinth. And I was like, that has no context without David Bowie. I'll put on the gray tights and and frou frou up here, whatever, shirt. My kid's mom, I think, made me an amulet to wear. She did, or someone else did. I don't remember who made it. Oh, I should. But I wore that to the David Bowie celebration as a note, and a couple people recognized it and gave me a nod for it, which is really cool. But getting to interview Gary Oldman was awesome. Spend 10 minutes with him even, and it was super cool because he's just like this really eclectic, out there actor, and does the most oddest characters and really dives into it. He's a performer, I saw him, during sound check. Even he was just hanging out there, and I talked to him a little bit, and then he was up, like they were recording it with like film cameras and what have you for some of it. So he was up there looking through the lenses of the cameras and being a part of the film part of it as well. I have a picture of him doing that, and it was so cool. It was just so cool. It was an amazing experience, and to have that evening of David Bowie's music. And I went with someone from work, and then my buddy Jens, and we. I planned this thing also because we had gotten all access passes. I planned this thing where I would be on stage during the encore for Under Pressure, because I had seen the set list backstage, and then the person I went through with from work would be up on the balcony and shooting the concert from the balcony, and then my buddy Jens would be in the crowd shooting from the crowd, and we'd have 3 cameras going of Under Pressure, and then I edited together this 3-camera shoot of Under Pressure, and it turned out really cool. You can find that on YouTube from that show. It was awesome. 2017, Foreigner, August 21st, 2017, episode 150. This was a memorable moment, and I don't remember much about the interview with Foreigner, but I want to talk about the group as a whole and their impact. I had become close with one of Foreigner's managers, someone who works with Foreigner, and who gave me a bunch of blues artists to interview, and they all have their great stories. And that's why I do this podcast, is to get these stories, to hear these stories from the artists of their up and coming and music's impact on them. And so I got to interview all these artists before he gave me his crown jewel of Foreigner, which I got to interview 2 or 3 times over the phone, different members of the band, and also get to go to concerts and have meet and greets with Foreigner. Actually, I even have a picture back here of one of the meet and greets with Foreigner that I did. over the years. This one was from the Giant Stadium where they play, where we got to be backstage at the Giant Stadium and meet Foreigner before the show. Um, and and so I mean to get to talk to them, and I mean they have a million hits. They're hit makers, and to get to go to some of their shows, I went to a handful of their shows. I went to at least like 3 or 4 Foreigner shows, and have different experiences from those shows. So I wanted to call out Foreigner as this memorable moment where I got to be kind of just present and to fly on the wall for their shows and get to talk to them about their music and kind of how they all came to the band because the band really wasn't in I mean is made up of a lot of new people who are not original members. So there's only one member of the band who's still with the band at this point, one original, but they were such a great band, and the new lead singer, I mean, he has pipes like the original as well. So they were super great. 2018, Steve Poltz. If you don't know him, you should look him up. He co-wrote a song with Jewel. I don't remember the name of it offhand, but it was one of her biggest hits. He wrote it, and so that's his biggest claim to fame. But he's this out there wacky dude, and I was just so intrigued by him. And I got to interview him at this festival called Guitar Fish Festival, where I mean, there was a couple-day festival. I went with an ex-girlfriend, and we went to this festival where I got high, and like I forgot the name of one of the bands that I was interviewing when I was interviewing them. I called them by the wrong name. I was too blazed. But when I interviewed Steve Pulse, we had a great chat, and we got this. He took this picture with me, like I was stepping out of a porta potty. It was weird, but it was just his idea, and he did it. It was funny and out there. But I also got him to relearn this song before the show that he put on, where it was a cover that he did, Mr. Snowcone Man, and my daughter really liked it, and so I got him to relearn it, and he brought me out on stage, and I held up my phone with the lyrics to him and would scroll the lyrics so he could remember the lyrics and go through the song. And he dedicated it to my daughter, and I recorded audio of it, and a buddy recorded video of it as well. So I have that. But that was really cool. That was August 13th, 2018, episode 191. One other memory from 2018. Episode 200 on August 15th, 2018, Ben Fong-Torres. You may be familiar with the name, maybe you're not, but he was the editor of Rolling Stone magazine. He was portrayed in the movie Almost Famous, which is my favorite movie. It was for the longest time my favorite movie. It's now kind of tied with Tommy Boy, but it's an incredible movie, and the movie that I can relate to the most as a child who interviewed bands growing up. And so Ben Fong-Torres was portrayed in this movie, and I got to interview the real Ben Fong-Torres in his home in San Francisco for our 200th episode, which was really memorable and impactful. And one of those moments where it's just, I grew up on Rolling Stone magazine. Almost Famous was a huge movie to me. And to get to interview this guy in his home was just so cool, and just nerd out on music and his impact and all the cool things that he had done and people he talked to and how he got his start. And I'm a tadpole in this guy's pool, this guy's pool that he's swimming in, but to kind of be doing the same thing that he did on such a smaller level and not get paid for it, by the way, but to get to kind of have some of the similar experiences and passions with this guy who's done this thing so right is so cool. 2019, Ben Kweller, April 25th, 2019, episode. Oh, I wrote the wrong episode. Oh, no, episode 220 was Ben Kweller, and Ben Kweller was impactful to me. I was a big fan of his music, and I'd seen him live a couple times, I believe, once at the Great American Music Hall, and I had a very memorable, life-changing experience while listening to his music. I was driving down to Fresno for a job interview, playing his album, and I had my girlfriend at the time to be my kid's mom, to be my ex-wife, all of that stuff. I had her in the car with me, and I made a boneheaded move driving and skidded out on rocks. Supposedly flipped my car. I don't know. People said I flipped my car, but it ended up on the right side. But I was in the gravel. I got sideswiped by a semi, and I'm lucky to be alive from it. And for days afterwards, long time while working, I had some PTSD stuff. I had his song "Hospital Bed" stuck in my head. I couldn't get it out of my head. And then I read about a near-death experience that he had with his family. And I'm like, I need to talk to this guy. I need to make it happen. I just had this need to talk to him. And so I pushed it with his publicist to kind of make it happen. He wasn't doing many interviews or anything, but I was able to get an interview with him, and really kind of, we had a connection during that interview, which was really impactful because I got to talk to him about his near-death experience and share mine, in which he was to no knowledge of his own a part of, and his music's great. And he had a band open for him called Main Man. It was with Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who's most known for his role as McLovin from Superbad. I got to interview their band as well at that same show, and got to meet him. Which was he was a cool dude too, and he's now in Ben Queller's band. He upgraded himself to Ben Queller's band, but interviewing Ben Kweller was really important and notable for me. Okay, one other show from 2019, Andrew McMahon again makes his way into my list of top 15 moments. December 19th, 2019 is when this episode aired, episode 247. I interviewed Andrew McMahon in, where were we? We were in the Midwest somewhere. I don't even remember where. It was in the Midwest. Why am I not remembering exactly where this interview took place? I think it was a venue called the Mystic, maybe. But I was out there with an ex-girlfriend, and we were visiting her family. I met the family. It was that serious at the time. And I went to the Green Bay Packers and the Bears game with a buddy and my ex-girlfriend. And Andrew McMahon's show was then. And so I set up an interview with Andrew. It'd been a couple of years since I'd interviewed him. And so I made it happen. I try and kind of get an interview Andrew every couple of years or so, to not overdo it, but keep present with him, keep up to date with his latest offerings with music, and to keep in his world a little bit, which is cool. And I mean, what else is he going to do in the Midwest except to chat with his buddy Steve Jones? I say buddy lightly. We're not real buds, but we're very familiar at this point. And so we had a great chat. It was just cool hanging and talking. And I mean, his album had just come out, and he had a single on it called Teenage Rock Stars, about his days with Something Corporate and kind of starting out as a rock star. And I brought some photos from my first concert, my first time seeing him live, from him and the SoCo dudes, where they were teenage rock stars. And I brought him out toward the end of the interview and just kind of relived those moments with him of the impact of his music on me, but also kind of memories from those shows, which was super cool. And then I got to see him a week later when he came to San Francisco. So I got to see him 2 times on that tour on different parts of the country. Super, super fun to catch up with Andrew McMahon in that setting again. Then we come to 2020. I'm passing all the early COVID stuff, in which the podcast made a big change, where we were able to start interviewing bands through Zoom. Most of my interviews all at that point had been in person at concerts, or maybe over the phone sometimes, but Zoom became prevalent during COVID, and I could interview bands all over the world, which was super cool to get to have long form conversations, much longer than I did in person, even sometimes an hour, in certain cases 2 hours, very rare at that length, but just natural conversations with artists in their homes or wherever they happen to be. And the one I'm going to note first, really the only one from 2020 that I'm going to note, is Tenacious D. I didn't get to interview Tenacious D, but I got to claim them on the podcast because Tenacious D had a virtual book signing in which they sold copies of their hardcover book that they put out, which came with a signed nameplate with it, like from Jack Black and Kyle Gass, and a 45-second meet and greet with the band virtually. And so I had this meet and greet with Jack Black and Kyle Gass, where I had to wait in a virtual queue for an hour and a half. I don't know, while everybody else cycled in first. And I had my number. We had dinner and everything. We were watching the numbers creep up. There was inappropriate for kids, Tenacious D content being played while you're in the waiting room waiting. So I couldn't really show the kids. I had to have it on mute. My kids were around. They very much know Jack Black. And so I wanted to do two things in this 45 seconds, two things that I wanted to do. And I was like screen recording, but I also had a camera set up behind me. And to my, I don't know if I knew it, but my girlfriend at the time was recording from the doorway video on her phone. And I wanted to get Jack Black and Kyle Gass to do a promo for my podcast. I'd interviewed Kyle Gass a couple times over the years, but never gotten Jack Black. I wanted him to do a promo for Concert Pipeline, and I wanted my kids to come in and say hi. That's it. Cram those two things into 45 seconds. Well, I think Kyle Gass's chair squeaked at the beginning of my time, and it's you get your time and then it's out. You don't get a second over 45 seconds. It's like boom, on to the next, right? They probably get 15 seconds in between each meet and greet person, and so Kyle Gass's chair squeaked, and then Jack Black was making jokes about it being like farting, and I'm just sitting there while they're bantering with themselves, and I cut in. I'm like, "Hey, will you guys do a promo for my podcast, Concert Pipeline?" They did. They did Jack Black said something like it was the greatest podcast in the world. But I have video from that where they're pointing at the screen while on camera with me, which I use at the beginning of Concert Pipeline. You can't get past this unless you skip ahead without seeing it. And so they were in some sense on Concert Pipeline, and I regret it still. It wrapped before I could get my kids into the frame to just wave and say hello, and I felt such guilt after that. It was rough. It was really miserable because I felt selfish that I had them do the promo first, and I prioritized that over my kids. I didn't know I wouldn't get both, and I made a choice in the moment, and I didn't know I wouldn't get to time for them to come in, and then it was just over and it was gone and there's no going back. And my son was like, "Can you get it back on video, do it again, sign up for another one or something?" And I'm like, "I can't, buddy, it's over, it's done." And it was rough, but that was a memorable moment. 2021, BottleRock, the Dave Grohl Experience, September 8th, 2021, episode 328. Okay, Foo Fighters were playing BottleRock for the second time. The first time was great. It was like 2019, I think, or maybe I don't know, 2018. And it was the only show they had listed in the United States at the time. It was a real one-off, so that was super cool to see him then. But Dave Grohl and Foo Fighters were playing BottleRock. I'm a big fan of Foo Fighters. In case you can't tell, I met Dave Grohl twice. Got a signed photo with him, and I'm a big fan. And they were playing BottleRock, the Dave Grohl Experience. Not only did they play BottleRock, Guns N' Roses were playing BottleRock, and I was up close for Guns N' Roses the night before the Foo Fighters were playing. And in their Guns N' Roses encore, before their encore, they brought out Pink for like 30 seconds. Boom, super quick. I got a picture of that. But they brought out Dave Grohl to sing Paradise City with them in their encore. I recorded video. I'm a pretty good videographer because I've done this for a while. And then Rolling Stone used my video I didn't even know it at first, but I got like tons of new subscribers on YouTube. I got lots of follows on Instagram and likes and all of that on Instagram and Facebook. I probably should have used it up a little bit more, but they used my video in their article of the, covering the show, and linked to my video, which got me like a ton of subscribers. Most of my subscribers in some sense are because of Dave Grohl. I'll have to say it. But so that was cool. But then also Dave Grohl and Greg Kurstin did these Hanukkah sessions where they they played 8 songs that they had only played I mean, in recording, they had never played it live, and this wasn't announced. It was the day of. They announced it through the app, and it was on a side stage, this really small stage. Dave was drumming, and they played these 8 songs from Jewish artists that they called the Hanukkah sessions, and they had only done it on YouTube. And I got to be right there. I was like right up against the stage or a person back or something. I was there and I recorded every song. I put it all up on YouTube, got some good traction. And still, even every Hanukkah, this past Hanukkah, I got more traction because those videos become prevalent again and people find them. And the most popular one, I think, is the version he did of Fuck the Pain Away by Peaches. And I have a set list of that song that he used also, which is cool. And so I call it the Dave Grohl experience. He also did the culinary stage, where he did some. He made a drink or something. I want to say I don't remember exactly what it was, but he made a drink, and I was there. I was everywhere Dave Grohl was at BottleRock. I was there following him along like a fucking fanboy. And I put it all together in one episode called the Dave Grohl experience. So you can go back and listen to that if you like. 2022, Smash Mouth, June 20th, 2022, episode 371. Smash Mouth was one of my first favorite bands. This is where I admit it. I've admitted it several times. I'm not going to deny it. Again, I mentioned earlier I had not great taste in music, but I had a chance to interview Smash Mouth back in 2019 when they were at BottleRock, I think. And this one was with their new lead singer, because Steve Harwell was having alcoholism problems and other stuff that was going on a lot. He was a mess, but the band went on without him and found a new lead singer in Zach Goody, and I had a chance to interview Zach Goody like after their first show that they did in Mexico City. He emailed me back and we set up time and we talked for an hour, more than an hour maybe, about all his other projects that he's done and kind of taking over the reins of Smash Mouth in his infancy. Like he was just getting started with taking over Smash Mouth as the lead singer. And we talked about it a lot and what it was and what it would become. And I was even like asking like, okay, so you play guitar. You know, Steve Harwell never played guitar in Smash Mouth or anything. Are you going to play guitar in Smash Mouth? He said, no, it's not right now. You know, he just wanted to kind of do it as Steve Harwell did it, I guess. And they hadn't recorded any songs or anything. Now they've recorded a couple of songs and the Christmas album that just came out. You can check that out if you want, a Smash Mouth Christmas album. And I got to talk to him for a while and it was cool. And then a couple weeks or a month or two later or something, Smash Mouth was playing a show a couple hours away, again in bumfuck nowhere, you know, in the middle of nowhere. And I just shot Zach an email and I was like, hey, you know, long shot, but if you are any chance you're able to get me on the list for the show, be cool to hang out at the show. And then he got me on the list with a backstage pass for their show, and I got to meet him in person at that show and catch up with him and talk to him, and then meet a couple other members of the band and hang out and record footage from the stage, the side of the stage and out in the crowd and all of that. Right, it was pretty cool. It was a cool experience as a fan of Smash Mouth. 2023. Back at Andrew McMahon again, March 27th, 2023. This is a notable interview for me. I know this is Andrew's like third time on my top 15, but he's a big part of my music. I'm a big fan of his, right? And so episode 400 of Concert Pipeline happens, and we got a chance to interview Andrew. He was doing some interviews around his new album, Tilt at the Wind No More. I got the album ahead of time, which was cool to get to hear it early. And I shared it with my buddy who had hosted with the Concert Pipeline with me early on and was a big fan of Andrew's and got me into his music. And we interviewed Andrew McMahon together. And that was really a lot of fun for me because I got to kind of give back to my friend for what he had given me in becoming a fan of Andrew's. I like to share that I like to share what I can. I like to give back to my friends and be there for them and support them, and this was one that we got to do together and just kind of fanboy out and talk to Andrew, it was so cool. It was just fun. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that episode, and it wasn't a big frills episode. We had done a big frills episode for episode 300 where we pull in a bunch of clips and did it live, and it was a couple of hours long, and we had drinks and we got silly, and that was that. And we talked about doing the same sort of thing for 400, but I was like, no, let's just keep it chill and let's just interview Andrew and do the episode around Andrew, and it was great. It was a solid episode of the program. And then one other notable moment from 2023, I got to interview Princess Goes, formerly Princess Goes to the Butterfly Museum, which is Michael C. Hall's band, where I got to interview Michael C. Hall from Dexter. I'm a big fan of Dexter, and I didn't mention Dexter at all in the interview. I was so proud of it, and I didn't mention Dexter at all. I kept it about the music, and I had interviewed the band's drummer 20 years before in one of his other bands, Morningwood, and so we talked about that a little bit as well. And they could see I was kind of legit about music and knew my stuff. And I got to talk to Michael C. Hall about David Bowie because he was in a play about Bowie, Lazarus, when David Bowie died, and he got to meet David Bowie and talk to him. And it was so impactful to him to be a part of that and to kind of play there and record David Bowie music right around that time. It's so incredible for him. And so what an incredible moment for me to kind of have that conversation with Michael C. Hall. That's going to do it for this episode of Concert Pipeline, in which we talked about something corporate. We talked a lot about Andrew McMahon throughout the podcast. Big fan. Thank you, Andrew, for just supporting the podcast over the years and being present and in my life and throughout this podcast tenure. I'm not sure when the next episode will be. I've been offered a couple interviews. I'm not pushing too hard or doing it right now. I'm kind of in the space where I'm good right now. But I'm really grateful for all the memories that this podcast has brought. If this were the last episode of Concert Pipeline, maybe it will be. Then I'll be okay, kind of stopping now at 10 years. I'm good. I've had my moments, but then I'll get offered other bands, and it's stuff that I can't turn down, and it rejuvenates me so much to get to have these moments and to get to continue to do this thing that has been a part of me since I can remember. And so thank you to my friends that have been there and a part of these shows that I've done and followed me on these silly adventures and get to do the cool thing with me. Thank you to the bands that have taken time to talk about their careers and their upbringing and their passion for music. Thank you to the publicists and the managers that I've built relationships with over the years and connections with, and have given their bands to this silly podcast that I do called Concert Pipeline. But I always promise to do my best with the interviews and do my research and dig deep and have meaningful conversations with these artists about their music. And when Concert Pipeline comes back for the next episode, it'll be the same. It'll be more of that, whether you know the band, whether you don't know the band. Please subscribe, tune in, because I'm proud of the content that I create. And I hope you enjoy it as well. And if you do, just tweet me. What is Twitter? I don't even use Twitter. Don't tweet me. I don't use X. I don't use Twitter, really. It exists. Find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast. All of that. It means a lot to hear from people that have like-minded interests. And so we're going to close out the podcast with one more song from Something Corporate show at City Grove, Anaheim. This is another one that I never thought I'd get to hear live, and I'm so glad that I got to. It is Babies of the 80s. For all of us here at Concert Pipeline, I'm Steve Jones. We'll catch you next time.
It's called Babies of the